Welcome, my children. Are you prepared for the most scary thing known to man? It's a video by the worst critic. Ooh, spooky. I've never done a video like this before, and that's because I'm not a real film fan. All I do is make review about superhero and make review about Star Wars and bully others on twitter.com. Last year, I finally decided that I was going to like movies and actually explore the small flame of passion about film that resides in my cold, lifeless heart. I decided to watch at least one horror movie that I hadn't seen before every single day in that fateful October of 2021, and that I did. I amassed 31 spooky movies during the season of Scare because I hate myself. Will I ever watch a horror movie again after this? Probably not. Are we going to talk about every single film that I watched during this spooktacular month? You bet your sweet ass we will. A lot of these are going to be very brief because we have a lot to get through, but if you want a more thorough dive on a particular movie, let me know. These will be mostly in the order that I watched them, except for the Friday the 13th movies, which I will stitch together at the very end of the video. I'm posting this on October 1st, so you can either follow in my footsteps or pick and choose which ones you want to watch this season of Scare. I do not know if I'll be watching 31 horror movies this October, but if I do, I'll be posting that video next year on October 1st as well. No more wasting time. Let us get thrilled and chilled. The very first movie I watched during this project was The Fly starring Jeff Goldblum. This movie absolutely rules. Maybe the best implementation of gore I've seen in my short time on this earth watching movies. I'm not a big gore fan in general. It's why I haven't seen the Saw movies outside the first one. But when the Fly starts shooting fly cum at John Gett's hand and his hand is just disintegrating, I was giddy. And I absolutely love that the Fly is strong enough to just punch the shit out of him or do some karate on this fucker. But because he still retains some of that jealousy that Seth Brundle had, he just tortures this poor dude in the gnarliest way possible. Honestly, going to start using my own stomach acid to defeat my enemies. That shit's amazing. The Fly is a very natural exploration of human insecurities and the monsters those insecurities can turn us into. Jeff literally becomes the Fly because of the insecurity he gains from his first relationship, or implied to be his first relationship. And it's done in a relatively quick way. It feels a bit uncinematic, and I actually love that. It feels very human. A lot of the movie feels very natural for me, and I appreciate that. I've noticed in a lot of these monster movies that they all feel big or filmy in a way, and there's nothing wrong with that. It works for those particular movies. But The Fly works because of how human it feels, and it makes the shit with him as the monster feel so much more distinct and awesome. While this isn't the first horror movie, it is certainly one of the most influential that I've seen in my lifetime. And while I recognize that fact, the movie doesn't quite age as well as I was hoping it would. Me giving this a less than stellar score doesn't mean it's bad, I think it was important, or that I even disliked it. This is just a rating based on my own opinion and perspective. I think one of the things that stuck out to me was the score. Parts of the original score are lost to time, so I only got a recreation in the version I watched, but oh god, did that help with the atmosphere. The atmosphere in Nosferatu is fucking delicious. The use of shadows is a famous observation on the film, and people were not underhyping it. It was the most interesting part of the film because holy shit is this movie kinda boring. That's a bit of a hyperbole. I did ultimately like the film, but the characters and plot are so thin the only things remaining are the atmosphere and the performance of Nosferatu himself. The performance is pretty incredible after he reveals that he is a vampire. Before the vampire reveal, he's such a goofy goober that I could not stop laughing. It takes a second, but once you get used to it and his long nails, the otherworldly performance fucking sings. It's so good and engaging. That's the thing that I think I like about Nosferatu a lot as a character. He's otherworldly and supernatural. Often vampires downplay this aspect of supernaturalness and focus on the human aspect. With this character being so distinct, despite its unmeasurable influence on so many films after it, I felt like I was seeing something completely new because of the performance and the direction given to the character. I want to love Nosferatu, but it's just extraordinarily thin at times. Ooh, I'm Dracula. I'm going to have sex with your mother. Okay, but for real, this movie's kind of lame. Nosferatu has a lot in the charm and atmosphere department, but this just kinda sucks a bit. Dracula has a really good story structure, and Bela Lugosi has an all-time great performance here, but outside of that, this movie just feels really cheap. Above all else, this movie needs a score. There are some classic Universal monster movies that thrive without music, but Dracula absolutely needs some bumpin' tunes. Some of these classic horror movies do not need a score because they aren't built around the atmosphere as a selling point, but when Dracula's intended draw is that atmosphere, no music cripples any chance of the tension permeating your theater. Lastly, I love that Van Helsing is just an old professor. I'm so used to him being like a traditional hero in the media depictions I've seen of him. Apparently he's just a dude in the original novel, but I can't read, so I don't really care. Frankenstein is a beautiful film. It doesn't have a score, but it absolutely does not need one. Frankenstein surprised the shit out of me. At this point, I had only seen a couple of really old horror movies and didn't get much in terms of subtlety, and that's completely okay, and not a bad thing at all genuinely. However, I almost pissed my pants in shock when Frankenstein told this super interesting narrative with these subtle, complex themes. I was absolutely in love with all the characters here, and I thought they were all incredibly rich and layered. The way Frankenstein's monster is treated and how that shifts his behavior in this film is masterful. I also adored the set design. That shit was so charming, it just drew me in. This movie is awesome. Like, there is a murder in this movie that had my mouth visibly open wide when I saw it. My friend who saw this in a theater with me can attest to the shock that I was in. A horror movie from 1931 left me visibly shocked with the murder by the pacing and the way it was filmed. I won't spoil the murder even though it's been around 90 fucking years since the film premiered, but I don't want to read any ape-like screeches in my comment section for spoiling Frankenstein when Eggsucker44 was about to watch the movie with his 3 girlfriends the day I posted the video. Incredible film. This isn't great for 1931, this movie is simply great. The original Frankenstein is A New Hope, and Bride is Empire Strikes Back. Somehow Bride tops an already perfected movie. Bride loses some of the subtlety of Frankenstein and adds layers of heart. The character of Frankenstein's monster is explored so richly in this film, it's without compare. This is the best performance I've seen in a horror movie without question. Boris Karloff absolutely embodies Frankenstein's monster, and he's given so much meat to chew on. I watched this film twice during last October, and those certainly won't be my last viewings. This film also has some incredible cinematography, especially during the reanimation of the titular Bride character. Bride also makes an interesting choice in having a clear antagonist. Henry Frankenstein acts as a pseudo-villain, a monster but not one necessarily set up from the beginning as a villain in the original film. Bride having a clear villain from the beginning adds a great dichotomy to the film and really helps to contrast with a changed Henry Frankenstein. I implore everyone to watch both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. These films are incredible, very short, and are important. Also, the Bride of Frankenstein herself is definitely mommy goals. Videodrome is interesting. This is definitely something I have to dive back into for a second rewatch before I can give my full thoughts on the themes and all that sort of stuff. It's about reality and the increasingly blurred lines between reality and media, I think at least, but my comprehension of the film only extends to that point. This movie is not at all what you expect it to be. There is some graphic scenes, but it's not as graphic as I was expecting, but also more graphic at the same time. This film is strange and also great. Don't look up anything about the movie before you see it. I think a blind watch will enhance your experience. Also, this is very important. Do not watch it with your parents or with anyone who you would consider a normal person. That's just my unprofessional opinion here. Night of the Living Dead is something really cool. This movie has a black lead in the late 1960s, and he's written in such a way that he isn't demeaned, demonized, or seen as lesser for his blackness. Besides that aspect, this movie just works. The characters aren't given rich and thematic arcs, but a movie like this doesn't need something like that. The characters grow and change in such a natural way that I don't mind the lack of traditional dramatic weight. The zombies in this movie aren't on screen a lot, but they influence the group dynamic in a fascinating way. The zombies here are also incredibly distinct. They move so differently than what I'm used to, and I honestly prefer this look and feel to the postmodern zombie design type. This movie is the first definitive modern zombie film, and I think it perfected a lot of the tropes that we see today. Apparently people absolutely love this movie, and I just don't get it. I've seen the original Evil Dead trilogy, and Army of Darkness is in my top 5 movies of all time. I adore that film. However, this movie has significant problems, and I'm coming from a perspective where I'm judging it separately from the Raimi trilogy. This movie is so fucking serious, and that would not be a problem if the film could develop any tension. It's so graphic, bloody, violent, and done so quickly that the violence and gore loses all dramatic effect by the end of the second act, if not sooner. The few times the movie got light and told a joke, it really worked, and I wanted more of that. Ha ha ha, funny MCU man, liked a funny MCU jokey joke. No, I hate the MCU. I've never liked a single MCU movie besides the cinematic achievement known as the Incredible Hulk. I hate this because it has the exact opposite problem. When your movie is riding solely on gore for tension and you've busted your load before the end of the second act, a good amount of jokes go a long way in persuading me against dragging myself to hell, which is a much better movie than this overhyped shit. I do like the look of the movie a lot, and I think the two main characters are pretty interesting for horror protagonists, so that's why I'm not giving the movie anything lower than a 5. House is my new annual Halloween watch. Most major holidays, I have a movie that I watch, and when I mean most, I mean 2 major holidays I have a themed film to watch. For Thanksgiving, it's Thanksgiving, which I've seen 3 times so far, and Nightmare Before Christmas for Christmas Eve, which I've watched for about 6 years at this point. These movies are very special to me for very, very different reasons.
God damn, Cheryl! That coffee tastes like shit! What'd you do, take a dump in it?
As a matter of fact, I sure did. I want a fucking divorce!
House finally made me decide on an annual Halloween watch. This film is absolutely incredible. It's peak goofiness, insanity, and chaos wrapped up in a film that's less than 90 minutes long. When I said don't look up anything for Videodrome, I meant it. But with House, really don't look up anything before it. This movie is so rare in that it doesn't have a lot of memes or spoilers despite it being an absolutely amazing time and a cult classic. Please watch House. Like, fuck Bride of Frankenstein, even though I think it's beautiful. If you were to only watch one movie I talk about today, watch House and watch it blind. The Haunted Castle is the first horror film, and it's from 1896, which is ironic, because that's the year me and your mom boned for the first time. This movie is only 3 minutes long, and it's got some fancy editing for the day. We get little cuts that are impressive for the early days of film, and that makes it look like the Devil Man is doing some devil magic. It being silent really adds to the overall atmosphere, though that isn't something the filmmakers could control because people couldn't talk before 1930. The editing and the original title absolutely carry this film. In America, we got the lame title, The Haunted Castle. Like, yeah, no one is pissing their pants when they hear that, but the original French title, The House of the Devil, is a title so spooky it'll make even the biggest of boys cry. It also does some heavy lifting in terms of storytelling that couldn't be done because filmmakers hadn't quite learned how to use intertiles for storytelling until 2 years later with Robert Paul's Our New General Servant. This movie is pretentious, but it's also really cute. The premise is that this Scandinavian couple finds a baby in their barn that is half sheep and half human. This little baby sheep is the single most adorable thing I have ever seen. It's technically a body horror movie, but if you get horrified looking at this cute little thing, then maybe you should take another look at your own kid. Really, Brad? This thing is less scary than the sheep baby? Consider putting your little weasel kid up for adoption. Your boy just called me 37 racial slurs and smite because I played Ymir. While this movie has a really cute centerpiece, it's also incredibly pretentious and slow, and I do not mind slow movies at all. I love The Green Knight, and the most action that happens in that is Dev Patel having a sticky surprise near the end of the second act. I wish the film embraced the genre. It's technically a horror film, but it's really just too lazy or too above the conventions of the genre so it can quote-unquote be unique. Okay, so this is another old horror movie, like extremely old, and the main horror iconography is just a black person. Also the moon, but it's mainly just a black dude existing that is scary. The movie is literally entitled A Nightmare, and the dude is dreaming about a black person existing, and that is scary to him. Why do racists let the people they hate live in their head rent-free? Like, you're scared of me? Little Bozo is scared of the small brown boy who shits his pants over Marvel movies? How fucking embarrassing. I did like the part where the moon tries to eat the racist man. That was pretty cool. Cabinet of Dr. Calgarli is my favorite silent film. Now, have I only seen maybe 4 or 5 silent films in total? Yes. But does that mean Dr. Calgarli isn't dripping with atmosphere, fantastic performances, and a great script? Of course not, because Calgarli has all of these things. The performance of the titular character himself is beyond incredible, but unlike Dracula and Nosferatu, he doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting. The other main characters are both interesting and give good performances, and it helps the film to not feel lifeless when Calgarli isn't on screen. The set and art direction in this movie is without compare, and widely recognized by critics for having some slappin' set design. I also have to encourage you not to go into this one looking up the plot. It's really interesting and kept me engaged surprisingly. Old movies tend to be very bare bones in plot direction, but this film actually kept me guessing, which is bonkers. After binging the whole Friday the 13th series, which I'll get more into a little later in this video, I have a fondness for slashers. They are not high art by any means, but they can be incredibly fun in their own unique and trashy way. Halloween Kills is not a movie that I'm fond of, at all. There is no trashy fun to be had here. Halloween Kills takes itself so seriously that it's almost comical, but the so bad it's good laughter fades incredibly quickly. It's pretentious, pretending to say something insightful about mob mentality when it has nothing to say at all. It pretends to explore the psyche of Michael Myers and why he kills. Both of these things are explored atrociously. What would have saved this movie was if it had some interesting and fun kills, but even the kills were this lame sort of shock jock gore that didn't feel real, natural, or goofy. It looked fake and uninspired. Halloween Kills isn't so bad it's good. It just reeks. Okay, so everyone has seen that video of Logan Paul wearing colorblind glasses and seeing color for the first time, right? Okay, so imagine if Logan Paul, after seeing color for the first time, decided to make a movie. Also, this movie has to be dubbed. This has nothing to do with Logan's alleged colorblindness, it's just the thing that has to happen as well. That's what Suspiria is. Suspiria is what I imagine a man that is turned on by colors would release as a film. It's very pretty, but absolutely bizarre and unique. The score also fucks harder than anything you've probably heard in any other horror movie. The characters aren't really much of anything, and the dubbing is infamous for its putrid quality, but this film is still highly entertaining. A woman falls into a pit of razor wire. Like, that's great. Like, come on, dude, that's really good. I love razor wire, and I love falling women. Perfect combination. I did not get a chance to check out the remake, but I do recommend you watch the original Suspiria. It's engaging and pretty. It's also kinda nonsense, but hey, who cares? The Wolfman features one of my favorite performances out of the Universal Monster Band. I absolutely adore Boris Karloff as Frankenstein, and Bela Lugosi is chewing the scenery in Dracula, but Leon Chaney Jr. has something about him that makes his performance so gripping for me. Maybe it's because he's getting gaslit by his father, gatekeeped by the colonel, and girl-bossed by the engaged woman. With all these different things happening to Lon Chaney Jr., he has so much to work with and play with. All these unique relationships combine to make the Wolfman known as Larry Talbot, and Larry is vastly more interesting than I expected. One other aspect of the Wolfman that I adored was the atmosphere. The fog dripping in the outskirts of the Talbot Manor is nearly orgasmic and had me fully engrossed during the transformation scenes. I think I'm just a slut for the classic Universal monster movie aesthetic. The Invisible Man is the goofiest Universal monster boy. I watched Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and the Invisible Man all in a theater as part of a 2-part Fathom event, and Invisible Schmuck is without a doubt the most chaotic best boy in the whole lineup. My guy is just throwing shit at people, pulling pranks, and doing some jolly murder. He just has loads of fun killing people. The main issue of this film is the setup and failure of the relationship between Invisible Man and Flora Cranley. You have some initial intrigue and desire to see this relationship develop in an interesting and complex way, but we really only get 2 scenes during this movie with the 2 main characters. One in the middle, and one at the very end. That is not enough time to explore this relationship. If they had made it a centerpiece of the film, this would be an absolute bop. But as of right now, it's just in a silly, goofy mood, and that's completely fine. It's really fun, and the lead is an absolute delight. Last Night in Soho was supremely dumb, but very cool visually and conceptually. It's a mishmash of good and bad, which is weird because I'm an absolute Edgar Wright stan. I adore his movies, and Scott Pilgrim is one of my all-time favorites. This movie has an incredible performance from Anya Taylor-Joy, striking visuals, and a premise that I like but isn't exactly unique. The film ultimately suffers from the twist. Yes, I have problems outside of the twist, but the twist is handled so poorly that it almost destroys the rest of the film. I can't spoil it, but I will say the reception towards the twist is very mixed. Some people don't mind it, but others like myself hate it. I don't necessarily hate the choice because I low-key agree with the concept philosophically and morally, but it's executed so weirdly that I just can't stand it. This movie feels very off. I hope Edgar Wright's next movie feels more like him. The Exorcist deserves all of the hype. Sometimes you watch an old movie that's critically loved but doesn't age well, like Nosferatu or Dracula. This is not The Exorcist. I absolutely adore this film. It's a rare slow burn horror movie that's not boring in the slightest. So much character development, so much tension building, and it's all incredibly effective. I have nothing new to add here, but I do have to say the performance of Max von Sydow is maybe my all-time favorite horror performance. His voice choice in the third act is without compare and adds so much to everything he's saying. My praise cannot do his performance justice. It's legendary, iconic, and rightfully so. We need more horror movies that are willing to take their time without being snooze fests. Nothing quite compares to The Exorcist. It's truly special. This year, I decided to watch every Friday the 13th movie. I haven't seen any of these before besides Freddy vs. Jason, and honestly, that's the only one you need to see. Despite my deep dive into these movies taking up more than a third of my whole fucking month, I am no expert in the slasher genre. Perhaps we could use the secret massacre tool of the day to call an expert to do this portion of the video for me. Ring, ring, ring. Randall the Vandal from youtube.com/Randall the Vandal. What a surprise to get you on the telephone. Please do the Friday the 13th part of the video for me, you stupid bitch. Thanks, buddy.
Hi there. Let's talk about Chucky. Oh, you thought I was going to talk about the Friday the 13th movies? Is that what you thought? No, critic. We're going to talk about the elephant in the room. The fact that you think you can get away with saying that the Child's Play remake is a good movie. It's a complete piece of shit that tries too hard to modernize the concept while stripping the story and central villain of any of the charm that made the original a classic. Maybe it wouldn't have been so bad had the series creator Don Mancini been involved. He's written every Chucky movie and has been directing them since Seed of Chucky, which is a good movie by the way, and I will die on that hill. But he wanted nothing to do with the remake, and those bastards made it anyway. Consequently, Brad Dourif, the iconic foul-mouthed voice of Chucky himself, also wouldn't agree to do it. The result is a movie so shameful, not even Aubrey Plaza could make it enjoyable. The fact that you haven't seen the original film but like this atrocious remake makes me want to strap you Clockwork Orange style to a chair and force you to watch every Don Mancini Chucky movie so you can finally stop being cringe, become based, and ascend to godhood as a disciple of Shrek. Now that we have that out of the way, the Friday series has largely endured due to its legacy as the ultimate popcorn horror franchise. When you watch a Friday movie, you know exactly what you're getting. Dumb, horny teenagers just waiting to get slaughtered by a machete-wielding, hockey mask-wearing killer. There's no deeper message or serious story, it's just booze, boobs, and blood. As opposed to a franchise like Halloween, which takes itself too seriously to be any fun, Friday revels in camp and ridiculousness. It plays into audience expectations by constantly trying to one-up its spectacle of on-screen violence. Each movie in the series increasingly leans into the appeal of the creative kills and the draw of its iconic mascot, Jason Voorhees. That is, until the disappointing fifth movie, which tried to take a more serious route and featured a different killer. But afterwards, the franchise bounces right back and becomes even more ridiculous fun with Part 6, where Jason is resurrected and slaughters people throughout the entire runtime in a movie that is just as much a cartoonish comedy as it is a slasher. Then in Part 7, it ramps things up even further by having Jason battle a protagonist with telekinetic powers. It's basically Carrie versus Jason, and it's awesome. Then, just when you think it can't get any sillier, in Part 8 they take Jason to Manhattan, in what is probably the worst, but also the funniest, Friday movie ever. And it also contains my favorite kill in the entire franchise, where a man boxes an unmoving Jason on a rooftop until he's exhausted. Then, with one punch, Jason knocks the guy's head clean off and sends it flying towards a dumpster below. It is hilarious every time I watch it. After Part 8, Jason breaks off into his own franchise with titles like Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, which takes him into space, but the legacy of the franchise has always remained with the first 8 installments of Friday the 13th. Its reputation precedes itself as one of the only horror series that isn't afraid to be silly and lean into the senseless violence that its audience has come to expect. Its detractors may call it nonsensical and shallow, but that's exactly why people love it, and why it makes the perfect horror series to watch when you just want to gather around with your friends and have a great time. And speaking of gathering with friends, Critic, thanks for having me on. Now go watch the original Child's Play.
Nah. Okay, now that Randall barged in on this video without me asking for his help, I guess I'll give a really brief review of each of these movies. In 10 words or less, this is my thoughts on every Friday the 13th movie. Jason is the scariest part, and he's in 3 minutes. These movies start becoming good when they stop hiding Jason. First Fun Friday, I love when Jason kills a lot. Tommy Jarvis is the first and last good character. Jason porn parody is exactly as good as it sounds. Finally, we stop pretending Jason is scary, and it works. Jason slams a woman into a tree. This film rules. New York Jason is barely in New York. Fuck you. Why is there so much fucking lore here? Why? Jason literally becomes a Power Rangers villain by the end. Racist Freddy gets his shit stomped by Ally Jason.
How sweet. Dark meat.
This film is dreadful. There is no joke. Those are my super short thoughts on every Friday the 13th movie. A lot of the movies are bad and have some censorship issues that result in the kills being lame in a few of the movies, but ultimately these trashy films are my trash. I feel connected to them. I spent so much of my time in that October watching them that they feel like my own children. I would absolutely not recommend you watch all of these movies. It is not necessary in the slightest. My Mount Rushmore and also my machete order for optimal Friday the 13th viewing experience is Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, Friday the 13th, Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, The New Blood, and Jason X. It's Fridays 4, 6, 7, and 10. With these selection of films, you're getting the Tommy Jarvis duology with 4 and 6. You're also getting some classic Jason in the 4th Friday. Then we get silly, goofy, fun Jason and one of the best in the series with the 6th film. The 7th is my favorite in the franchise and features the best final act out of all the movies. 4, 6, and 7 work exceptionally as a trilogy. I find that the Friday movies are best viewed in pairs because of how short they are. 3 movies becomes a marathon, 2 is a low-stakes viewing and can be easily thrown on at a party. If you only want 2, then I'd go 4 and 6. Those are the films that best pair together in the entire franchise, and you'll have a blast watching them while drunk with your friends. I only put Jason X on my Friday the 13th Mount Rushmore because of how insane it is. It's a semi-self-aware blast, and it's also not a Friday the 13th movie, like, at all, but I still recommend it. I hope you all enjoyed my Halloween special that's releasing a year later because fuck you, I have a great sense of time management and this was definitely planned. If you've seen any of these movies, please let me know your thoughts on them. If you watch any of these movies because of this video, tweet me at The Worst Critic on Twitter or message my Discord server and we can chat about it. I'd love to get some more people into the movies that I discussed today, especially House. Please watch House and love it. If you do not love it, do not talk to me. I don't want to know. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you had a great day, and make sure to check out one of the videos in the end card. Subscribe, hit the bell, and farewell.